Hello, everyone. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
And welcome to our News Digest unit for the month of December. It also just happens to be our all-English unit for the month of December. That means we have given the Chinese teacher the day off. And today we're going to talk about a tragedy that took place in the summer last June, and that was June 14th, which we'll talk about here in more detail. It's all about an overturned boat. This took place off the Greek coast, and that lets us know about the peril of migrants.
Right. So if a boat overturns, it flips over. So we're talking about a boat that was really loaded down with a lot of people who were trying to make their way to the European continent, and the boat turned over. And a lot of these people, of course, had no life jackets. I'm sure a lot didn't swim. And sadly, so many people lost their lives on this particular fishing vessel. It probably wasn't very sturdy to begin with.
Right, and that's our story for today, so we'll get to it right now. We'll read the entire contents, and then we'll come down to analyze all of it for you. In a tragic incident off the Greek coast, an overcrowded fishing vessel carrying around 750 migrants overturned on June 14th. This accident claimed the lives of over 80 people. These desperate migrants had opted for the dangerous sea route via Greece because of its standing as a major gateway to the European Union. Unfortunately, the number of people exceeded the capacity of the boat and it overturned. Following the disaster, Greek authorities initiated a thorough inquiry amid accusations of negligence. Claims that the ill-fated boat overturned because of poorly executed towing attempts by the Greek Coast Guard were hotly contested. Officials insisted any line thrown to the boat was merely to assess the boat's situation, not to tow. The boat was transporting a diverse group of migrants, individuals who had left their home countries for Europe in hopes of improved living conditions or employment. Given the economic turmoil and political instability in Pakistan, where around half of the migrants on the boat came from, a significant proportion of those involved in the incident could be classified as refugees. These were people compelled to abandon their homelands, not by choice, but by adverse conditions threatening their survival. Accompanying them were people who had resolved to make Europe their permanent home for whatever reason. In fact, waves of immigrants have created heightened tension in Europe since the 2010s, prompting increasingly rigorous border controls that only address the symptoms without addressing the root causes of mass migration. This distressing incident highlights the grim realities of the ongoing migrant crisis in the Mediterranean, which is putting the lives of countless families in peril. Their desperate voyages not only challenge Europe's border regulations, but also reveal the deeper unresolved crisis of the global inequality that forces migrants to seek better lives.
Let's dive in, guys. We're talking about a very tragic loss of life in this particular all-English unit. And the headline says, "Overturned boat off the Greek coast highlights migrant peril." There are several places around the Mediterranean Sea where people can sneak into some of these countries illegally. And this is what is happening here. Of course, Greece is surrounded by the sea. And so a lot of people will get on boats and try to get in there. We're going to talk about how Greece is actually a gateway into the rest of Europe and explain how that is. But for now, we're looking at the headline, the title. And as you know, if it's a headline on a newspaper story or even an article, it won't be a complete sentence. We'll be missing words. So here we've got an overturned boat, a boat that flipped over, and it was off the Greek coast. So it was very close to landing on one of the Greek islands, but it was still off in the water. And this highlights or draws attention to the migrant peril.
Right, and of course, if you're preparing for a test and you're reading your textbook, you might highlight certain words in the text so you can see them more easily later. So this emphasizes the fact that these migrants are in peril. Peril is a dangerous situation. You could be injured, you could die, or whatever. Oh, I'm in peril, please save me. And a migrant, of course, is somebody who moves from one country to another for whatever reason. In this particular case, though, it does refer to people who are going from place to place because of some kind of danger. They're not actually going through legal channels. Like if you want to move from Taiwan, say, to Australia, then you would be an immigrant.
Yeah, there is a difference. I looked this up because I thought, what's the difference between calling them migrants and immigrants? A migrant and immigrants, the things they have in common are these people they're leaving their own country voluntarily. For different reasons, like they want to pursue more education or they're looking for work. But the difference between the two is the immigrants are there to stay permanently, and the migrants are there just temporarily. They don't have plans to stay long term, but they are looking for different types of jobs. Maybe they're wanting to settle down, get some education there. We've got a lot of this happening around the globe right now, but we're kind of just spending some time today focusing on this fishing vessel that was carrying quite a few migrants that overturned in last summer, June 2023. And it's very, very tragic. We're going to talk about a lot of these words that have to do with the immigrant crisis, you could say, around the world.
The first paragraph, rather, it says, in a tragic incident off the Greek coast, an overcrowded fishing vessel carrying around 750 migrants overturned on June 14th. This accident claimed the lives of over 80 people. So again, this is a tragic incident, or an accident, I guess you could say, and it occurred just near Greece there in the Mediterranean Sea. And this fishing vessel or this fishing boat was overcrowded. There were too many people on it. In fact, there were 750 people on this boat.
Wow.
And it overturned, which means it turned upside down, basically in the water. And of course, the people all fell into the water, and a lot of them couldn't swim, a lot of them drowned, a lot of them died, etc. And this, of course, resulted in the death of 80 people, or the deaths of 80 people, which isn't all of them, but still, that's a pretty high number.
Oh, it's a very high number. Hopefully, there were no children, but we don't know. So, yeah, it claimed a lot of lives. When you read that in the newspaper or you listen to news reports, they'll often use that word claimed. It claimed so many lives. Just means that those people were killed in some sort of accident. Those people died. So it claimed the lives of over 80 people. It may have been because the fishing vessel couldn't handle that much weight. We don't know. Oh, I wanted to mention this peril. We actually use it quite a bit. So if you're in peril, you're in danger. Or if something is in peril, maybe your job is in peril because of the economy. Just means that something's at risk of having a bad ending. So if your job's in peril, it's at risk. Maybe you're going to lose your job, lose your work. So something can be in danger if it's in peril. This was a really sad situation for these migrants. So moving on to paragraph 2. They were desperate. People who are desperate have no hope. They're willing to do just about anything to change whatever bad situation they're in. It said they had opted for, if you opt for something, you choose. They had chosen to take this dangerous sea route via Greece or through Greece. Because of its standing, its position, its reputation, that's what people saw it as a major gateway to the European Union, the EU. A gateway is just sort of an entrance to some place. And so it was, if they could get to Greece, they knew that they were close to getting into the EU, the continental part of Europe.
Right, and sometimes they go to Italy as well because they're in the Mediterranean Sea there, and sometimes they sail from Africa, like from Libya or wherever. They sail on up and they try to get into the EU, but they were desperate and they opted for this sea route, and of course Greek has the standing or the position or the official recognition as a gateway to the European Union. Unfortunately, the number of people exceeded the capacity of the boat, and it overturned. So this is bad. Unfortunately, that's when we changed the tone of our essay here. Yeah, they were going to immigrate there, but unfortunately, something bad happened, and there were too many people on the boat. It exceeded or went over the capacity of the boat, capacity of how many people it's supposed to hold. And, of course, there were more people in there than there were supposed to be, and it overturned in the water, causing a lot of trouble.
And that's where the sadness comes in. They just had way too many people on that particular fishing vessel. When I think of a fishing vessel, it's not exactly something that looks sturdy. Usually it doesn't have that many people on it. You go out for, maybe the day to fish and come back. So you can imagine. So following the disaster, Greek authorities, these are people who are in charge of usually police or the Coast Guard. Those are a type of military that take care of the coast for a country. The authorities could be the politicians. People in charge are the authorities. They initiated or started a thorough inquiry amid accusations of negligence. So I guess we all hate to see anyone lose their life. And so, of course, people are upset and they started pointing fingers. That's what we use a lot when we're saying, hey, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. We want to blame somebody. So they started this inquiry amid accusations. So inquiry is just when you have some questions about something. We often will use it, though, for police situations where someone's doing some investigating and they have questions about what took place. So they started a very complete inquiry amid accusations.
This word can also be pronounced inquiry, which might be simpler or easier for our dear students to pronounce. Inquiry. Inquiry.
And they use that more in the UK, inquiry.
Okay, and I think they spell it with an E in the UK, if I'm not mistaken. But in any case here, they had a thorough inquiry. They were asking questions and trying to determine what happened here. And this was amid accusations. If something's amid something, it's in the middle of something. So there were these accusations going on when they conducted this investigation, when they conducted this inquiry, and we have these accusations of negligence. An accusation is when you claim or you charge or you state that someone has done something wrong or that they have done something illegal. Hey, I resent your accusation and I did not steal money from the company. That would be the accusation that you claimed someone stole money from the company or did whatever.
Yeah, and here they're getting accusations of negligence. People are looking at the Greek authorities and saying, hey, we think what happened was because of negligence. Negligence is a word we often use in law. In legal situations, maybe you've been arrested for murder, and they say you've been indicted for negligent homicide. Homicide is murder, and negligent means there's something you didn't do well enough, you weren't careful enough, you didn't care enough, and it led to someone's death. Negligent is the adjective form, but negligence is the noun. So you don't ever want to be accused of negligence. It means somehow you just didn't care enough to take care of something in the proper way, and it led to someone getting hurt or maybe even dying.
Right, and it says claims that the ill-fated boat overturned because of poorly executed towing attempts by the Greek Coast Guard were hotly contested. So first of all, we have claims, and they were contested. Some people agreed with them, some people disagreed with them. And what were the claims? Well, they claimed that the ill-fated boat overturned because of poorly executed towing attempts by the Coast Guard of Greece. So here, to execute something just means to carry forth with something, to carry out some kind of action. And yes, they had these towing attempts. To tow means to pull a boat because it doesn't have its own power. Lots of shipping vessels need to be towed into harbor because they can't operate in the shallow water. They need to have a towboat pull them in, or a tugboat, I should say.
Tugboat, yeah.
Tugging or towing is the same thing. And again, to execute just means to carry this out. And they thought that these people just didn't do the towing the way they were supposed to. The Greek Coast Guard were negligent. They should have done this towing in a different way.
As Tom said, execute is a verb, and it just means to carry something out. Maybe you have a contract with a new client, and you want to execute this contract, to carry it out. Execute also means to put someone to death for something they did that was illegal. But here it just means to carry out some sort of plan that has been put into effect. So, yeah, they were claiming, people that were pointing fingers, of course, at the Greek Coast Guard said, hey, it's your fault. You were trying to help tow them in and you did it wrong. And the Greek Coast Guard said, that's not true. If you contest something, this isn't a contest. This is contest, which is a verb, and it means you really disagree with some sort of decision that's been made, and you formally say that it was wrong or unfair, and you want to have it changed. You try to get it changed. Maybe your favorite baseball team or soccer team lost an important game, and your team said, hey, we're going to contest this win. We're going to take it to the authorities because we think it wasn't fair. Or maybe an election was stolen, you think. And you can contest that election. You can say, hey, it was wrong. It was unfair. People cheated. We're going to try to get it changed. So that's contest. Remember, sometimes you can only figure out some of these words by seeing the phrase that it's in or the sentence that it's in to see what other words are surrounding it. It's kind of hard. It's like your 破音字 in Chinese. Sometimes we don't know which definition is being used here or how to even pronounce it. But if you look at the whole sentence structure, you can guess it by the context.
Exactly. So it was contested. People basically just opposed something as being mistaken or as wrong. And of course, they thought that they were giving them the rope to assess the situation, to look over the situation, and not to tow them. Okay, that brings us to the midway point in our explanation for today. Let's take a break now, but please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, guys. This is our all-English unit, and we're focusing on some news that took place back in June. And we had a fishing vessel that was just loaded down with lots of migrants, 750 to be exact, 750. And the fishing vessel overturned, and it claimed the lives of over 80 people. So it was a real tragedy that happened. Of course, when this stuff happens, people are upset. And I would be too. There's a lot of death here, and it's so sad. And it could have been prevented, perhaps. So there were a lot of fingers pointing at different parties, and some felt that it was the fault of the Greek Coast Guard, that they had thrown this line out, thinking they were going to use it to, tow the boat in, and it actually led to the boat overturning. While the Greek Coast Guard wanted to defend themselves and say, hey, that's not what we were doing. No, we weren't trying to tow the boat in. We were just trying to assess the situation, figure it out.
Exactly, okay. So there's some kind of controversy going on with that. And the boat was transporting a diverse group of migrants, individuals who had left their home countries for Europe in hopes of improved living conditions or employment. So, of course, you've got different kinds of people on this boat. It had a diverse group of migrants, which means you've got different people from different countries, different genders, different races, different ages, etc. So it was quite diverse. They were migrants again, and they had left their home countries, and they were heading to Europe, because if you go to Europe, supposedly you can have improved living conditions, or you can get jobs there and live normal lives. Of course, some people migrate from countries that are quite dangerous, and if you go to Europe, it's going to be safer.
Used to be. Nowadays, not so much. We've got too many people who are going into the EU, and so now it's kind of turned into a disaster in so many countries. So it's just sad. We're moving on to the fact that this boat had a very different or diverse group of migrants, as Tom said. And they'd left their home thinking if they could just get to Europe, life would be so much better. It may have been better maybe 20 years ago, 10 years ago even, because the EU still had some money that they could be helping the migrants with. But now, most of these countries were all broke, including the U.S. We're all broke, and we have too many people to take care of. So instead of helping those countries better their own situation, sadly, I think the West has increased the danger for these folks by encouraging them to come over. And now they're saying, okay, enough, we have enough people. So they were going in hopes of having improved living conditions, maybe getting a better job, making some more money. So given the economic turmoil and political instability in Pakistan, where around half of the migrants on the boat came from. So we know right here, a lot more than half of the people on the boat were from Pakistan in the Middle East. There was a significant proportion of those involved in the incident that could have been classified as refugees. If you're a refugee, you're usually leaving a country that is war-torn, or you're being persecuted perhaps for religious reasons. There are lots of reasons why people leave their countries as refugees. Turmoil is one of our vocabulary words, and we use it a lot when we're talking about war or natural disasters or just a scene where there's a lot of chaos. Maybe you could say, oh, my life is in turmoil. I just broke up with my boyfriend. I lost my job. I have to move this week. If there's turmoil, there's just a lot of disorder, chaos, uncertainty, confusion. Those are all parts of what could be making up this turmoil. Turmoil here is a noun.
Exactly. It's just a chaotic situation like in Taipei. If the traffic lights don't work during rush hour, traffic will be in turmoil. People will not be able to get to where they want to go.
Yeah.
It will be one big mess. And yes, indeed, in Pakistan, where around half of the migrants on the boat came from, a significant proportion of those involved in the incident could be classified again as refugees, people escaping a dangerous area to try to find sanctuary in another place. And these were people compelled to abandon their homelands, not by choice, but by adverse conditions threatening their survival. So if you're compelled to do something, you are kind of given the incentive to do something. You have this motivation. So they were compelled to abandon their homelands, not by choice. Okay, we don't want to leave. We'd like to stay here. We actually like our lives here. But unfortunately, we have these adverse conditions which are threatening our survival. A war is going on. There's persecution. There's a famine or whatever. Of course, there were lots of refugees leaving Syria. I don't know if they're still streaming out of Syria so much now as they used to be, but of course it seems like there's always something going on somewhere in the world and people are trying to move from one place to the other.
Yeah, and adverse or adverse, you can pronounce it either way. It just means bad, harmful, unfavorable. And a lot of times if people are compelled to do something, they're forced to do something. I think here you could probably say they felt like they had no other choice, or they just wanted to get to a better situation. So, yeah, you can be compelled or forced to do something. For example, students who go to schools with uniforms feel that they're compelled to wear those uniforms. They really don't have a choice. They are forced to do something, or maybe because of a law or your government, you're forced to do something that you disagree with. You could say you were compelled. But also, as Tom said, it's also just a really strong feeling inside. Maybe something inside you yourself is compelling you to do something. But here, they just felt like they had no other choice. So accompanying these people were accompanying them, or these people, who had resolved to make Europe their permanent home for whatever reason. So there were just a lot of people. They were looking and they were thinking, oh, if I could just get to the EU, it looks like it's so much better over there. But, the grass is always greener. It's a phrase we use when people think, oh, my situation's so bad. If I just could go somewhere else, it'll be so much better. Not necessarily. And we're seeing that now because a lot of these migrants are coming to the EU, going to the EU or even America right now and finding out the situation is not what they thought it would be or what they were told it would be. And they probably wish they were back home. So in fact, right now we've got waves of immigrants. Waves just emphasizes the fact that it's one group after another. If you go to the ocean, the waves just keep coming into the shore, one after another. It just never ends. And this has created heightened tension in Europe. Since the 2010s, a lot of European villages, cities, even countries in general are starting to resent the migrants because they're kind of destroying their way of life. So heightened means to increase something. If you have a heightened sense of something, it just means it's really sharp. So here it's just increased tension in Europe has been taking place. In the last, I'd say, 2 or 3 years, it's gotten so much worse.
Exactly. So, of course, they're all wondering what to do about these people. Should we let them in? Should we help them out? Or should we keep them away? And if they go back to their countries, they may be in big trouble. We don't really know. But in any case, the tensions are heightened. And, of course, this has prompted or brought about increasingly rigorous border controls that only address the symptoms without addressing the root cause of mass migration. So, yes, we've got this problem in Europe, and people there are asking their governments to do something. Quit letting these people come in. It's hard enough to find jobs as it is. And all these new people are causing problems with housing and crime and all sorts of stuff. So they want these rigorous border controls. If something's rigorous, it's severe, it's strict. They're just not letting so many people in, although there are ways to slip through here and there. But they're increasing those border patrols, which would be in the ocean, of course, in the Mediterranean Sea. And yes, they're just addressing the symptoms and not the causes. Okay, so the symptoms, of course, are the migrants heading to other countries, but the root problems are what's going on in those countries. Did they have a famine? Is there some kind of a tyrannical government or something like that?
Did the West come in and start a war?
Exactly. So,
a lot of times it's the West causing problems in some of these countries. Oh, anyway, it's kind of tough. So, symptoms, the people coming in, the problems they're causing, but we're not looking at why they're actually leaving their home countries. I think if you ask most of these people, they would rather stay home. People don't want to leave their home, everything they're familiar with, the food they love, the people, they can speak the language. So I don't think what we're doing is actually helping anything. So this distressing incident, distressing means people are really upset about it. It's causing anxiety, pain, sorrow. It highlights or points to the grim realities of the ongoing migrant crisis in the Mediterranean. Grim here is a word we use to talk about something that's really worrying. It's a situation where there's no hope. Or maybe you have a teacher that often has a very grim expression on his or her face. They look very serious. And it's kind of a little scary to you. Or maybe you're in a grim economic situation where you just don't know how you're going to get out of it. You're not making enough money to pay your bills. Life can be very hopeless when you're in that kind of situation, and I think this is how they're feeling.
Right, and so that's a grim situation there in the Mediterranean, which of course is the ocean south of Europe and north of Africa there. And that's putting the lives of countless families in peril. There's that word peril again. They are in danger, they're in trouble. And their desperate voyages not only challenge Europe's border regulations, but also reveal the deeper, unresolved crisis of the global inequality that forces migrants to seek better lives. To me, I think they probably are mistaken in thinking that Europe has some really good wine and cheese and stuff like that, but you don't have to go to Europe to find good wine. They've got good wine in Chile and South Africa and other places like that, so maybe Europe is not all it's cracked up to be.
I think they've been led to believe that the welfare system will pay for their housing and their food, and they're anxious to get into that situation. But once the money runs out, it's tough to keep offering those things to migrants who are coming in. So that's what's hard. So hopefully our leaders will get smarter, because so far they have failed at all of these policies for the last decade or so. But it's hard not to feel sympathy, I'll tell you, especially for some of these families that really feel like they have no alternative but to get out of the country where there's a lot of war.
Yep, they are families with kids who are, innocent, and of course we should probably figure out a way to resolve this problem as soon as possible. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today, and that's of course the end of our unit. So please join us again next time for another interesting lesson that we really enjoy teaching you. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.